Hello, dear friends. This brief lecture is on painless, needle-free glucose monitoring. And this is going to be an upcoming revolutionary technology, non-invasive glucose monitoring. There is a big difference between the treatments for diabetes versus the technologies for diabetes. When there is a time-tested treatment available for diabetes, for several years, it is there to stay forever. However, for a technology, even though it is a successful technology, it keeps on advancing, it keeps on improving. And that is very special about all the technologies which have influenced the lives of human beings. These are my disclosures. I have nothing to disclose pertinent to this lecture. How can I ignore Glucovage biographer in a lecture pertaining to non-invasive glucose monitoring technologies? Historically, this has been the first ever and still the only US FDA approved non-invasive glucose monitoring, which can automatically and non-invasively measure the glucose levels. I have a passion for history, and that is why I have included Glucovage biographer in this lecture, even though this is a story of failure. It was a miserable failure. Still, this has been an innovation almost 2 decades before Apple Watch was even launched. And this was a watch with multiple sensors to monitor glucose levels, and Anima's LifeScan thought it was a panacea. And they procured Cygnus in the March of 2005 through a $10 million deal, only to realize that this results in skin irritation and there is insufficient accuracy. Not only LifeScan burned their fingers, the device also resulted in burning of the skin of many of its users. And the FDA within months recalled the product. And that is the end of the story of Glucovage biographer. However, the biography of Glucovage biographer is now part of history and has got a place and position whenever we are discussing the non-invasive technologies for glucose monitoring. We can never ignore this discovery. So let me now share from my personal collection. This is the first ever glucose meter that I have procured for my mother, and that is an Ames reflectance glucose meter almost 30 years ago. And this is a first ever CGMS gold, and that is from Miniman Medtronic, which was launched in India officially in the year 2004. And both these devices are still in my diabetes museum, in my collections. And this has been the story of evolution of glucose monitoring from first generation to second generation to the third generation of continuous glucose monitoring devices to the current fourth generation. That is what we are discussing today of non-invasive needle-less monitoring devices. So why do you require them? Aren't you satisfied with the currently available devices? The answer is the patients and the physicians. Of course, we have been using it for a long time now, but we are not that happy. It is painful. And the pain, I will say, is a major deterrent factor to a structured glucose monitoring advice, which is given to the patients. And the strips are costly. The sensors are costly. So there are multiple challenges with the currently available invasive glucose monitoring techniques. Non-invasive glucose monitoring has become a topic of international research. And if this method evolves to be successful in the coming months or in the coming days, in the coming years, then it could bring relief to millions of those people with diabetes globally. Let me now introduce a device which I have procured online very recently. I got an inquiry from a person with diabetes in a neighboring country. And then I started inquiring, and then I stumbled upon a website, and from there I could purchase this online. And we tried to contact them again to get more information on the research, on the evidence, on the studies and publications, but there was no response. So I am not, possibly I am not aware of any accuracy or reliability, but this is a very, 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 very exciting innovation. The e-touches, which is just launched and available for purchase online. And they claim that this is the world's first patented high-tech, non-invasive blood glucose monitor. And there are 3 modes for normal people, for those with pre-diabetes and those with type 2 diabetes. And they have a statement. Clearly, they have stated that this is not meant for those with type 1 diabetes. So obviously, this is not a reliable device. But out of curiosity, I purchased it. It was almost 30,000 Indian rupees. It is providing you with very fast results within seconds and requires only 2 3-year batteries. Very easy to maintain. No requirement for any needles or lancets or cotton or alcohol. And you need not purchase any strips. And the power consumption is also very low. You can test up to 1,000 tests with 2 batteries. And this is the correct method of using it. Don't use the tip of the finger, but use the pulp of your finger. So these are the steps that they have been advising. You wash your hands with the soap and water, and then you have to place the thumb and the fingers over the sensors. And the results are there within 15 to 30 seconds. I will show you a demonstration, which I have recorded in a video. And this is the glucose meter reading, 135 milligrams per deciliter, and this is 1 hour after food. And this is the demonstration. So you can see that this is also with me. I'm holding it in my hand now. And you can see that there are 2 sensors over there. In the front, there are 2 sensors. So I can, so I have made it postprandial. At the back, there are 2 sensors. And I am placing the thumbs over the sensors in the front and the index fingers over the sensors at the back. And you press it over there, and within seconds, it will display the reading. And the reading somehow is very closely matching with the reading in the glucose meter. But unfortunately, when I'm checking it repeatedly, I'm getting a variable reading. And the difference is more than 30 or 40 milligrams per deciliter. And when I'm changing from normal mode to diabetes mode or to pre-diabetes mode, again for the same person, the glucose keeps on changing. So the technology is just evolving, but it is very exciting. Technology is only evolving. So how will you classify the glucose monitoring methods? It can be invasive, it can be non-invasive, or it can be minimally invasive. And these are the advantages of non-invasive. And this is why we are all waiting for non-invasive meters to be available for some people with diabetes. There are no needles, no blood, no pain, no puncture, no tissue damage. However, I would say the most important factor will be the huge savings, apart from no pain. Of course, the important factor which is preventing from monitoring the glucose is pain. And the next important factor will be the cost of the strips, the cost of the sensors, and so on. With non-invasive meters, there is no recurrent expenses involved. So of course, this is only for the engineers, but those of you who are interested for probably going into the depths of how the mechanism by which it is monitoring the glucose, measuring the glucose, the non-invasive glucose monitoring technologies can be broadly divided into optical, microwave, and electrochemical methods. Optical can be either near-infrared reflectance spectroscopy, polarized optical rotation, Raman spectroscopy, fluorescence, and the last one is optical coherence tomography. And among the electrochemical glucose biosensors, we have the 1st gen, 2nd gen, and the 3rd gen, which is the direct glucose oxidase electrode. So I will briefly discuss only one among the optical methods, and that is probably the most popular one. I still remember witnessing a glucose sensor based on Raman spectroscopy at one of the 83 meetings way back in 2009. And Raman scattering, it is based upon the principle of scattering phenomenon of light. It is fairly very accurate, but unfortunately, when you are using it in human beings, there are differences in the skin tone, there are differences in the hydration level, there are differences in the thickness of the skin, and there is difference in the basal metabolic rate, which can result in variances in the glucose measurement. So unfortunately, so this cannot be used. And among all these optical methods, though there are merits, the demerits are more. They are cumbersome. There is a requirement for a detection equipment, which is again very sophisticated. There are large interference of background signals, and the measured value is not correlating with the actual glucose levels, and the linear range is narrow, and it requires algorithms for correction. And hence the optical methods are undergoing probably advancements and improvements. The original methods cannot be replicated in the clinical scenario. So let me now move on to the non-invasive biofluid-based glucose monitoring techniques. And let me start with saliva, because saliva is the fluid, and that is the secretion which is the easiest to extract and collect when compared to other biofluids. And you can use a mouthguard type made of biocompatible and non-toxic materials. And apart from glucose, there is lactic acid, phosphate, enzymes, and even hormones and antibodies in the saliva. And usually there is a good correlation between saliva and the glucose levels in the blood. Another one is tear-based glucose monitoring. When compared to saliva, there are less of impurities in the tear, and it is a rich liquid. Apart from glucose, there is salt, protein, and glucose as well. And it is also positively correlating with the blood glucose levels. Sweat-based, another very popular mechanism. There are multiple devices in the pipeline, and you can see the patch or the band type in this picture. And this can even be combined with closed loop systems if you are developing continuous glucose monitoring device. Sweat is a very hot medium for non-invasive monitoring. And this one has been very popular in the newspapers and in the media until very recently. Both Novartis and Google has been experimenting, partnering with Dexcom and other manufacturers and other major players. And it was based on a fluorescent light to monitor glucose levels using contact lenses. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. The results were unreliable, and this has faded out. So these are the stories of failure. So most of these are stories of failure. So researchers have been constantly behind non-invasive monitoring technologies. Another one is tattoo-based. It is easy to wear compared to other sensors, and it combines two technologies: reverse interferotic extraction of interstitial glucose and enzyme-based amperometric biosensor. So this is a schematic representation, and this is how it looks like a printable interferotic sensing system. And this is displaying the tattoo-based paper. And then you have the multiple electrodes over there, the silver electrode, the Prussian blue electrode, the hydrogen layer, and underneath you can see the different stages of the process involved, starting from the meal, the time frame of a typical on-body study, ultimately resulting in detecting the glucose levels. Moving on to another major player, multiple devices are there undergoing clinical trials from Diamond Tech. And this looks almost similar to a mobile phone. And you need only 5 to 15 seconds without any prick. You can place a finger over there on the sensor, and it is supposed to be very cost effective as well. So there are 3 devices: D-base, D-pocket, and D-sensor. None of them are currently available commercially. So despite all the merits that I have discussed, based on biofluid, a measure of glucose levels, there are many, many limitations and demerits. Saliva, multiple impurities, including bacteria, and the sensitivity is low. And of all these samples, hysteretic, which is a common limitation. Tears, poor precision. Sweat, every analysis, the person needs to sweat. And hence not suitable for a practical use, not for realistic use. And when you're using interstitial fluid, again, skin irritation. So all these have multiple challenges for use in clinical practice. Moving on to non-invasive continuous glucose monitoring. So until now, we have been discussing non-invasive glucose monitoring, and this is about continuous glucose monitoring. And here again, there are more than 24 devices in the pipeline. I would probably mention G-Wave since this has been granted by FDA for a fast track designation. So FDA has granted a fast track designation. So probably the results are accurate and exciting. The sensor is inserted in a ceramic, lightweight, you can see this in the picture, a comfortable bracelet. And this is worn over the wrist. And this uses radio frequencies to detect the glucose levels. And these are the other ones undergoing clinical trials, the Graphia, Movano, MySugar, D-Sensor, all of them are continuous glucose monitoring devices. And almost all of them are integrated into a watch. So these are all wearable devices. All of them are CGM devices, the LifeLeaf, the Affen watch. This one is different, Novio Sense. The sensor is under the lower eyelid. And from there, it can wirelessly transmit the glucose levels to an app in the mobile phone. So it looks very exciting, very, very exciting. Sugar bead is another one. And sugar bead, unlike the other one, and this is from a UK-based Nemora Medical, already approved for use in the United States. Sorry, UK-based Nemora Medical is already approved for use in Europe. Yes, this is one device which is already commercially available. Unlike the other sensors, it is a small peel and patch device that sticks on the skin, but you need to replace this patch once in every 24 hours. And that is a limitation. Once every day, you need to replace this patch. And it transmits the information to the companion smartphone via Bluetooth once in every 5 minutes. Let me now share an exciting innovation from our own country. And this again, we tried to contact multiple times. And this is EVA. There was no response from the manufacturers. It looks like that they have conducted the clinical trials. And it looks like that it is pretty reliable as well. But we couldn't find the information on how they have conducted clinical trials. And we couldn't find out the publications and evidence related to this. However, the news has appeared all across the media. Bluesemy has officially launched this product at Las Vegas in early 2022 at CES convention. And according to the inventors, this is a patented technology leveraging sensor fusion, artificial intelligence, and smart Internet of Things. And within 60 seconds, in 1 minute, it can measure 6 parameters. Very, very interesting. Apart from blood glucose, electrocardiogram, heart rate, blood pressure, SpO2, and even temperature. Some of these are already available in some of these smartwatches, but blood glucose is not available. Temperature also is not available in any of the popular wearable devices. So this is Apple device from the watch providing you with a wealth of information available for more than 3 years now. Apart from activity, apart from the heart rate variability, notifications on high and low heart rates, electrocardiogram, a very in-depth analysis of sleep data, and even VO2 max. And this is how Apple has progressed during the recent years. And honestly, let me tell you, most of the devices that I have presented today, including the 3 or 4 devices available in the market, though they are very expensive, they are not reliable enough for clinical use. And once Apple launches either glucose or continuous glucose sensing, and that's the moment when I will start believing that this technology has advanced enough, sufficient enough for clinical reliability and use. So why am I presenting a topic on non-invasive glucose monitoring? For those of you listening to me, please believe me, there are multiple startups young engineers from India working on this. And the experts believe that there is a potential that is existing for non-invasive devices in diabetes. And the industry analysts are predicting a booming market in the next 5 years for non-invasive devices in diabetes. And here I stop. I believe that this has been beneficial for you. And if non-invasive sensing I strongly believe and wish non-invasive glucose monitoring to be a reality in the next 6 months to 1 year. And that's when it is going to be really, really beneficial and will be a game changer in the management of diabetes. And this will be a blessing for all of those with pre-diabetes and diabetes. Thank you. Thank you very much for being with us today.